I got back to Denver earlier than expected. The tech conference in Phoenix had wrapped up a day early. Nothing unusual, just poor planning on their end. My flight touched down mid-afternoon, and I didn't even stop to grab dinner. Honestly, I was looking forward to surprising Laura. After the week we'd had, it felt like the right move. Things had been tense between us lately, but not in an explosive way. Just muted, distant. We'd always had phases like that. I figured maybe a quiet dinner together, maybe some wine and takeout, could help reset things. I even bought her favorite pastries from that little place near the airport. 1 box of macarons, just the way she liked them. Almond, vanilla bean, and lemon. I parked in the garage, grabbed my suitcase, and took the elevator up to the 17th floor. Our condo overlooked the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern interior, minimalist everything. We had picked it out together 5 years ago, back when we couldn't keep our hands off each other and every argument ended in laughter or something better. I keyed in the code and quietly pushed the door open. The first thing I noticed was how clean the place looked. Impossibly clean. Our condo always looked presentable, but this was different. Like it had been staged. I saw a half-full wine glass on the coffee table, a throw blanket neatly folded on the armrest. No sign of Max, our golden retriever, which was odd. He usually greeted me the second the door opened, tail wagging like he hadn't seen me in years. "Max!" I called out softly. Nothing. The place wasn't silent, though. From the hallway leading to the master bedroom, I could hear voices. I paused, holding my breath. One was Laura's, low, controlled, but definitely her. The other was a man's. His voice was deeper, muffled, confident, familiar in a way I couldn't immediately place. I stepped out of my shoes and moved slowly down the hallway, instinctively avoiding the creaky board near the coat closet. Then I heard her. "Don't count on it lasting much longer." I stopped. Her voice was smooth, almost rehearsed. Not upset, not hesitant. Then came his response. "See you soon." There was a faint chuckle, followed by the sound of the sliding balcony door shutting. Not loudly, like they'd done this before, like they knew how to move quietly. My heart wasn't racing. That was the weird part. It was like my body hadn't caught up to my brain yet. I stood there for another 10 seconds, just listening. Then I turned the corner and walked into the bedroom. Laura was sitting cross-legged on the bed, laptop open in front of her with the Netflix logo paused on screen. Her phone was in her hand, and she was swiping through something. Instagram, maybe, or messages. She looked up and blinked once, her face freezing like a deer in headlights before settling into something more practiced. "You're home early," she said, not surprised, not happy, just acknowledging it. Yeah. Conference ended sooner than expected. I walked in slowly, eyes scanning the room. There was no sign of anyone else, but the balcony curtain was swaying slightly. Wind or movement. I dropped my suitcase by the wall and set the pastry box down on the dresser. "Brought you macarons," I said. She gave me a tight-lipped smile. "Thanks. That's sweet." I nodded. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then she gestured to the laptop. "I was just watching a show and talking to Hannah. She's going through hell right now. Brent's cheating again." I murmured. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to hear more lies. "I didn't hear you come in," she added, trying to sound casual. "Thought you were getting back tomorrow." I walked over to the window and looked out. Our balcony stretched about 10 feet wide, with glass panels overlooking downtown Denver. The view was incredible, but right now all I could focus on was the faint outline of footprints on the wooden deck. 2 sets. One of them larger than mine. "Where's Max?" I asked, still looking out. "Groomer," she replied instantly. "Took him in this morning. He had mats in his fur again." More silence. I turned around and studied her. She wasn't fidgeting, wasn't panicking. She wasn't doing any of the things a person would do if they were afraid they'd been caught. Instead, she seemed calm, as if she'd prepared for this moment or one like it. She pulled her legs in and stood, brushing imaginary lint off her leggings. "I should probably finish that call with Hannah," she said. tapping her phone. She's been crying all afternoon. I nodded slowly. Yeah, of course. I could feel her eyes on me as I walked back to the hallway. I didn't say another word, just grabbed my jacket off the hook, slipped my phone into my pocket, and left. I didn't slam the door, didn't ask any questions, didn't yell, didn't cry. I walked down the hallway, hit the elevator button, and waited. Somewhere between the 17th and ground floor, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out without thinking. One new text. Hannah, if you just walked out, you did the right thing. Call me. I'll tell you the truth. I read it once, then again. My thumb hovered over the screen. I hadn't told anyone I was coming home. Not even my coworkers. Not even my sister, who lived 2 neighborhoods over. So how did she know? I didn't call Hannah that night. I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot off Spear Boulevard. Engine off, heater on. The Denver skyline was lit up in the distance, but all I could focus on was that one message. If you just walked out, you did the right thing. Call me. I'll tell you the truth. I must have read it 40 times. The way it was phrased, if you just walked out. Not did you walk out? Not are you okay? She already knew, which meant she hadn't just guessed. She'd been told something, or worse, she'd seen something. And if she was offering to tell me the truth, then Laura definitely hadn't. I didn't want to hear it. Not then. I wasn't ready. It's funny how the mind works. It clings to familiarity, even when your gut is already screaming the truth. I wasn't ready to blow it all up. Not without some kind of clarity. Not without knowing for sure. So instead of calling Hannah, I drove to a motel. Not one of the seedy ones. A clean, forgettable place off I-25 with vending machines and blackout curtains. I checked in under my name, no attempt to be clever. I wasn't hiding. I was delaying, postponing the inevitable. I threw my bag on the chair and collapsed onto the bed fully clothed, staring at the textured ceiling, the hum of the heater the only sound in the room. And slowly, things started clicking, one by one. The first thing that came to mind was her new gym routine. Laura had never been a fitness person. She'd always said her ideal workout was carrying groceries up the stairs or walking to brunch. But sometime around March, she got obsessed with a 6 a.m. kickboxing class. At first I thought, great, good for her. She'd come home flushed and smiling, saying things like, "It feels good to sweat before the day starts." I'd kiss her on the cheek, tell her she looked strong, and head to work. But then she stopped coming home sweaty. She started showering at the gym. And eventually, she'd come home smelling not like sweat or shampoo, but something else. Something subtle and expensive and masculine. I asked her about it once. "Is that cologne?" She blinked, like I just asked her something in a foreign language. "What?" "Your sweater. It smells like cologne." She laughed. Not in a cute way. In a you're imagining things kind of way. "Oh, that's from Jess at work," she said. "She wears that Tom Ford stuff. Strong, right? It lingers." Probably hugged her after a meeting. I didn't say anything, just nodded. But I remember Googling Tom Ford cologne later that night. I'd never smelled it before, but I recognized it instantly. That scent had been in our apartment before. Back then, I believed her. Not because it made sense, but because I wanted it to. Now I couldn't stop rewinding every odd moment from the last 6 months. Like the time she said she was going out with the girls to that wine bar in Capitol Hill, and I spotted her location on Find My iPhone still showing up on the other side of town. She brushed it off when I asked, said it was a glitch, GPS error. I let it go. Or the night she forgot our anniversary dinner. We planned it 2 weeks ahead. Just a low-key reservation at the French bistro we both loved. I showed up, suit jacket and flowers in hand. She never arrived. I texted her, called her. 2 hours later, she finally replied, "OMG, I'm so sorry. I completely blanked. Rough day. Can we reschedule?" I told myself people forget things, that maybe she'd been overwhelmed. But she didn't even seem all that apologetic. No flowers, no makeup dinner, just a shrug and a promise to do better next year. And then there were the nights she didn't want to be touched. At first, it was just the usual long day. I'm tired stuff. We all go through those slumps, right? But eventually, she stopped hugging me altogether. I'd reach for her hand while watching TV, and she'd pretend to be fixing her blanket. I'd kiss her cheek in the kitchen and feel her tense up. I remember once, maybe 2 months ago, I asked if she was okay. She turned to me with this expression I'll never forget. "Do we have to talk about this?" she said, barely above a whisper. "It's just mental clutter. I don't want to fight." We weren't fighting. I was trying to understand. But now I realize she'd already moved on. She just hadn't told me yet. That night in the motel, I barely slept. I kept flipping between the bed and the armchair, checking the time every 20 minutes like I was waiting for something. A call, a text, a sign. I finally passed out around 4 a.m. and woke up to sunlight cutting through the blinds like a blade. I checked my phone. No new messages from Laura, but the one from Hannah was still there. I stared at it for a long time. Then I hit dial. She answered on the second ring. "Jason." "Yeah." "Hey," she said, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "I wasn't sure if you'd call. You said you knew the truth," I said. "I need you to tell me." There was a long pause. Then she said, "Okay, but you're gonna want to sit down." I already was. "It's Dave," she said, from her office. I didn't recognize the name at first. "Dave. He's one of the architects," she continued. "They worked on that new tech campus together. Remember? The one she said took up her whole September?" I closed my eyes. Of course I remembered. She'd come home every night that month ranting about how intense the deadlines were, how she barely had time to eat, how she needed space, quiet, no distractions. Apparently, Dave had been the distraction. "They started off innocent," Hannah said. "Flirting, texts, coffee. But that changed fast." I didn't ask how she knew. I already trusted her more than I trusted Laura at that point. "They went on a trip together," she added. "In July. She told you she was visiting her aunt in Oregon." I nodded slowly, bile rising in my throat. That trip. She'd sent me photos of trees, a dog, a book by a lake. Told me she was offline to reset. Said I wouldn't understand because I never stopped working. "She spent the weekend with him at a rental in Boulder," Hannah said. "I didn't want to be part of it, Jason. I told her it was wrong. I told her she'd ruin everything." "And she did," I said flatly. "She's been trying to get you to leave," she continued. "That's why she's been cold. She wants to make it your idea. That way she can say you gave up." I didn't speak. Couldn't. It felt like the wind had been knocked out of me, and yet I'd already known. All of it. My mind just needed someone else to say it out loud. "I'm sorry," Hannah whispered. "I couldn't keep watching it happen." "Thanks for telling me," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. After we hung up, I stared at the wall for a long time. Dave, coworker. Not some stranger in a bar. Not some fleeting temptation. Someone she saw every day. Someone she laughed with, ate lunch with, lied to me about. And all this time I thought we were just struggling. That every couple had their rough seasons. But Laura wasn't in a rough season. She was planting an escape route with someone else. When Hannah hung up, I just sat there, holding the phone against my knee like I was afraid to put it down. It wasn't disbelief anymore. It was something worse, clarity. That cold, hollow understanding that everything I had suspected was true, and that the person I'd built my entire life around had been lying to my face for months. The name Dave kept circling in my head like an echo. Dave from the office. Dave, the one she said was just a friend. The one who sent her memes on Instagram that made her laugh out loud at the dinner table. The one whose name showed up on her phone when she accidentally left it unlocked last spring. I'd asked her once, teasingly, "Who's Dave?" She smiled and said, "My office brother. You'd like him. He's harmless." Right? Harmless. I remember that exact night. We'd been sitting on the couch, half watching a movie while she scrolled through her phone. She'd been laughing, tapping away, and when I asked who she was talking to, she said, Work group chat. Later, when she went to the bathroom, I glanced at her phone. Just a glance, and saw a text bubble pop up. Dave missed you today. Don't forget to breathe. And she'd replied with a heart emoji. Back then, I told myself it was innocent. Everyone flirts a little, right? Harmless banter. Office morale. But now, with Hannah's voice still echoing in my head, I realized I'd ignored the obvious because the alternative was too painful. The alternative meant that my wife, the woman who used to fall asleep with her hand on my chest and whisper goodnight into my skin, had chosen someone else. I stood up and started pacing the motel room. The carpet was rough, cheap. My thoughts weren't any smoother. I opened the curtains, stared at the parking lot below, then shut them again. It felt like I was trapped inside a snow globe, everything frozen, my life shaking but landing in the same hollow silence. I needed to see it for myself. Proof. Something tangible. Words weren't enough. I knew her laptop password. She never changed it. Max 2019. Our dog's name and the year we adopted him. I teased her once for making it so obvious, and she'd said, "Who's going to hack me? You?" We'd laughed. Now that joke felt like a knife. I drove back to the condo. My key still worked, which somehow made the betrayal sting more. The air inside smelled faintly of her perfume and the lavender candle she always lit after her so-called yoga sessions. It was like walking into a crime scene where the evidence had been scrubbed but not completely erased. Her laptop was on the kitchen island. I opened it, hesitating for a moment before typing the password. The desktop loaded instantly. A folder caught my eye. Project Archive. Normal enough, except it was new. She never saved anything to the desktop. She liked things tidy. I opened it. Inside were subfolders named after months. March, April, May, July. That one stopped me cold. July, the Oregon trip. My stomach turned. The July folder contained photos. Hundreds of them. Architecture sh*ts, blueprints, some group selfies from the firm. And buried halfway down, a picture that didn't belong. It was taken in what looked like a cabin living room. Laura was sitting on a couch, her legs draped across a man's lap. She was smiling at the camera. He was holding a glass of wine, his hand resting comfortably on her thigh. I didn't need to guess who he was. My throat went dry. For a long time, I just stared at the screen, my reflection faint in the glass, watching myself discover the truth. The photo wasn't even hidden. No password. No encryption. She hadn't cared enough to hide it, because she assumed I'd never look. Because she thought I trusted her that much. I scrolled through more. Text screensh *ts. Notes. A calendar event titled Boulder Retreat. Internal meeting. There was nothing internal about it. My fingers trembled as I closed the laptop. For a moment, I thought I might actually throw it, just hurl it against the wall and listen to the satisfying crack of impact. But I didn't. I forced myself to breathe, to stay still, to absorb it. That was when the anger started to settle, not the shouting kind, but the cold, calculated kind. The kind that changes you. I sat at the kitchen counter, looking around at the life we'd built. Every piece of furniture, every framed photo, every shared thing now felt foreign. The trip to Aspen, the anniversary portrait, the Christmas card on the fridge. All of it staged. She'd been halfway gone while I was still believing in the illusion. I opened my phone and scrolled through old messages. Back in July, she'd texted me from that cabin. "Love you. Wish you were here, but I needed this break." She'd even sent a picture of a hiking trail, captioned, "Clearing my head." I laughed out loud. The sound didn't even sound like me. By the time midnight rolled around, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to confront her screaming or crying. That's what she'd expect. She'd twist it, make it about my temper, my overreaction. No, she'd already built the narrative that I was the unreasonable one. Hannah had warned me. She'd wanted me to be the one who left so she could tell everyone Jason walked out. Jason couldn't handle her independence. Jason abandoned her. Not this time. I took photos of everything. The emails, the photos, the texts. Sent them to my own account, then to a flash drive I'd found in the junk drawer. My hands moved on autopilot. I didn't even feel the weight of what I was doing until it was done. When I finally closed the laptop, I noticed a small detail. Her wedding ring sitting in the ceramic dish by the sink. She used to take it off when cooking, she'd said. But the sink was dry. She hadn't been cooking. The ring gleamed under the kitchen light, a small circle of gold that suddenly looked more like a symbol of irony than love. I picked it up and held it between my fingers. It was warm. She must have worn it earlier that night, before he left through the balcony. The thought made my skin crawl. I set it down again and left the apartment. This time I didn't look back. In the car I called Hannah. She answered immediately. "You were right," I said. She sighed, the sound soft, almost mournful. "I'm sorry, Jason. I really am." "She's been planning this, hasn't she?" "Yes," Hannah said quietly. "She told the girls she wanted to make it look like you gave up first. That way she could play the victim later. She even said you were too nice to fight dirty." I felt my jaw tighten. "Then she doesn't know me as well as she thinks." Hannah hesitated. "What are you going to do?" "Get smart," I said. "And make sure when this ends, it ends on my terms." "Good," she said softly. "You deserve better than this." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she added, "Jason, don't tell her I told you. Please, I don't want to be dragged into it." "I won't," I said. "Thanks for being honest." "Be careful," she whispered. "She's not the same person anymore." I hung up and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. She was right. Neither was I. The man in the mirror didn't look like the guy who'd come home early with a box of pastries and hope in his chest. That guy was gone. What was left was someone else entirely. Someone ready to fight back. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Didn't even need an alarm. My body just knew. Sleep was over, and the next phase had big asterisk N. The air inside the motel room felt colder, heavier. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember the last morning I'd woken up without feeling some level of confusion or dread. The last time I didn't check my phone and wonder if she was where she said she'd be. It had probably been over a year. I didn't cry. I hadn't cried yet, which was strange. I kept waiting for it to hit, the wave, the breakdown, the sobbing. But it never came. Maybe it was still on its way. Or maybe part of me had already been grieving long before I knew the truth. Instead, what I felt was resolve. I pulled out my phone and opened my contacts, scrolling until I landed on a name I hadn't tapped in years. Mark Halzer. Old college buddy. We hadn't talked much in the past few years except for the occasional Happy New Year or fantasy football trash talk. But I remembered he'd gone into family law, opened his own firm downtown. I hesitated a second, then hit dial. He answered on the third ring. "Jason." "Yeah, sorry to call early." "No worries, man. Everything okay?" I let out a dry breath. "No, not really." He was silent for a beat. "You want to talk about it?" "I need a lawyer. For divorce. Fast." That got his attention. "All right, come in today. Noon." "Appreciate it." We hung up, and I sat for a minute, letting the weight of that word, divorce, sink in. Just a few days ago, it would have shattered me. Now it felt like the only sane move left. By 8 a.m., I was back at the condo. I had no interest in seeing Laura, so I timed it carefully. She usually left around then, always rushing out the door with her coffee in a to-go cup, muttering something about back-to-back meetings. Today, I parked a block away and watched from the car. Sure enough, right on schedule, she walked out in heels and sunglasses, checking her phone without looking up. She didn't see me. I waited another 10 minutes, then went inside. The place felt even more sterile now, cold and curated. I went straight to the bedroom and grabbed 2 duffel bags. Packed my things with military efficiency. Shirts, socks, jeans, underwear, toiletries. Left behind a couple old hoodies and a winter coat I didn't care about. That was fine. I wasn't here for keepsakes. Next, I started digging. Quietly, carefully. I checked drawers, mail, the home office, looking for anything that might help. Bank statements, receipts, credit card bills. I found a manila folder stuffed with papers. Some of them joint, others solely in my name. That's when I realized something that made my jaw clench. I'd been paying for almost everything. The rent, the utilities, the car insurance, groceries, cell plan, her half of the credit card, even the cleaning service. Laura had a part-time gig at the architecture firm, but she'd said she was cutting back hours to work on certification courses. Looking at the numbers, it was clear where the money had gone. Salon visits, designer brands, high-end restaurants, a $275 charge from a wine bar in Rhino. I hadn't been to that place since our second anniversary. That meant someone else had. Every receipt felt like a punch to the gut, but also like fuel. I photographed it all. Every page, every statement, stored it in a cloud folder, backed it up twice. Then I dug deeper. Passwords, shared accounts. I logged into our joint checking and started combing through charges. What I found wasn't illegal, but it was ugly. She'd been siphoning small amounts from our shared account into a second one. Personal one I hadn't known existed. Tiny transfers labeled as coffee runs or lunch with coworkers. Over the past 9 months, she'd moved nearly $6,000. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was preparing for her escape. One small transaction at a time. I changed the password on the shared account. Not to lock her out, just to make sure I'd be notified if she tried to do it to me again. Then I opened a new personal account, transferred half the funds, and froze all automatic payments until I could review them. It was the first time in weeks I felt like I was doing something to protect myself. Before I left, I stood in the middle of the kitchen, letting my eyes scan the room. On the counter was a photo of us from 2 summers ago. Boulder Trail, her arms wrapped around me, my face tanned and smiling. It looked like love. Maybe it was back then. I took the photo down, opened a drawer, and shoved it inside face down. Then I left. Mark's office was sleek and modern, with glass walls and exposed brick. We shook hands, and he led me into a conference room with a window overlooking the city. He let me talk. Didn't interrupt, didn't judge. Just let me lay it all out. The gym story, the texts, Hannah's warning, the balcony, the emails, the photos. When I finally stopped, he leaned back and rubbed his chin. "You're not the first person I've seen go through this," he said. "But you're doing a hell of a lot better than most. I don't feel like it. That's normal." He tapped his tablet. "The good news is you're ahead of the curve. You've already gathered evidence. You didn't leave the apartment permanently, so you haven't abandoned the residence. And you haven't confronted her emotionally, which means we're not dealing with a messy police call or restraining order." I raised an eyebrow. "That's common. More than you think. One blow-up in the wrong moment, and suddenly the person who got cheated on becomes the one in legal trouble." That sank in deep. "Here's what I need from you next," he continued. "Start a log. Document everything. Every interaction, every conversation, every expense. Keep texts. Record calls if it's legal in the state. Colorado is a one-party consent state, so you're good. Do not move out for good until we file. Already in a motel. That's fine. Just don't give up your lease rights. We'll get temporary occupancy handled in the filing." He sent me home with a checklist. Get a P.O. box. Secure digital copies of marriage documents. List all assets, furniture, electronics, accounts. Estimate the value of everything jointly owned. Felt like I was being handed the keys to my own war room. Back at the motel, I spread it all out across the bed. My laptop, my phone, the flash drive, my list of logins. I made folders, sorted evidence, marked red flags. It was mechanical, methodical, almost therapeutic. That night, Laura texted me. "Laura, can you tell me where you are? I came home and your stuff is gone. Are you okay?" I didn't reply. I wanted to. Part of me wanted to say, "No, I'm not okay. I saw the photos. I know about Dave. I know everything." But I wasn't ready for that moment yet. Because I wasn't going to be the guy screaming in the hallway, throwing accusations she could twist and dismiss. I wasn't going to be the villain in her version of the story. I was going to be the quiet, steady one who documented everything, who played the long game. who left the courtroom with a clean conscience and a clear win. The next morning, I got an email from Mark with the subject line, "Initial filing draft." It was real now. The day after that, I picked up the P.O. box key. And that afternoon, I got an alert on my bank app. Laura had tried to move $800 out of the shared account. She failed. And suddenly I smiled. Not because it was funny. Not because it felt good to hurt her. But because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one being fooled. The day Laura was served divorce papers, I was sitting in a corner booth at a downtown cafe, watching the whole thing unfold from across the street. It wasn't petty. It was strategic. Mark had told me the timing mattered. Get the paperwork filed fast, serve it clean, and make it formal before she had a chance to spin anything. She needed to know that I wasn't just walking out, I was walking away with a plan. She stepped out of her building around 3:15 p.m. Sunglasses on, phone in hand. Her stride was as confident as ever, until the server walked up and asked for her by name. I saw her blink, confused, then take the envelope. Her face didn't move at first, just blank. Then I watched the color drain from her cheeks. She opened it right there on the sidewalk. Read the first page, then the second. And that's when she looked up, right across the street, right at me. I didn't wave, didn't smile, just held her gaze for 3 full seconds, then stood, left my untouched coffee on the table, and walked away. I didn't need to be angry anymore. I was past that. This was clarity. By that point, things had already started shifting around her, and not in her favor. Hannah had kept her word and stayed quiet about our call. But the ripple effect was happening anyway. She and one of Laura's other close friends, Ally, had quietly distanced themselves. No dramatic confrontations, just silence. Group chats went dead. Dinners were canceled. Invitations stopped showing up on her calendar. And Laura noticed. I could tell. She called me 2 nights after being served. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. "Laura, we need to talk. Please. You don't understand everything. Laura, don't do this like this. Laura, at least give me a chance to explain. Laura." Jason, I left every one of them on read. The next day, I got a message from Hannah. "Hannah, you were right to keep quiet. She's unraveling. She thought no one would turn on her. Now she's panicking." Part of me wanted to feel bad. There was a time when I would have rushed to fix everything. But that part of me was fading, replaced by someone who'd spent the past few weeks learning how to stand alone. Later that week, Mark called to update me on a new development. "She tried to file a counterclaim," he said. "Claimed emotional distress. Tried to label your behavior as abandonment." I didn't even flinch. "And we shut it down. You have a log, time-stamped bank activity, and proof that you maintained access to the apartment. She has nothing. It was a bluff." "She's trying to rewrite the story," I muttered. "She's failing," he replied. "Let her keep trying." That's when the real fallout started. Apparently, word of her affair had leaked at work. Not from me and not from Hannah. But offices have ears, and Laura had been sloppy. She'd taken a few work trips with Dave that were billed as conferences, and it didn't take long before whispers reached the wrong people. The architecture firm had a strict internal relationship policy, especially for interdepartmental connections that hadn't been disclosed. Dave was her direct collaborator on multiple active projects. HR got involved. Laura was quietly removed from 2 of her accounts. Dave was suspended pending internal review. I found out about all of this from a guy named Wes, an old acquaintance from college who happened to work in the same building. He messaged me out of nowhere on LinkedIn. "Wes, hey man, heard about everything. Just so you know, you were the last one to find out, but you're the first one doing something about it. Respect." That stung more than I expected. You were the last one to find out. How many people had looked at me, smiled to my face, knowing what was happening behind my back. But again, that was past tense now. I was in control. Mark and I met again the following Monday to finalize asset division. Thanks to the documentation and the fact that I had covered 90% of the shared expenses, we negotiated a fair split. She kept her car, kept mine. Furniture was divided by receipts. I kept the condo. And most importantly, none of her personal credit card debt became my responsibility. I'd been worried she might fight harder for the condo, but she didn't. She folded quickly. Mark said she looked defeated in the mediator's office, like the image of powerful, unbothered Laura had cracked under the pressure. When I asked him if she'd said anything about me, he nodded. She said she didn't expect you to handle it like this. Like what? Like an adult. Calm. Strategic. Cold. I smiled. Good. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to make a scene. I just needed to walk away with my head high, and all her lies exposed. There was one final hit to her social standing that I hadn't expected. Apparently, she tried to rally a few mutual friends to her side, claimed I had abandoned her emotionally, that she'd been lonely and lost, that the marriage was already over before Dave came into the picture. But the problem with lies is that they have to hold up in front of people who know the truth. Hannah quietly corrected the timeline with anyone who asked. She didn't go around trashing Laura's name. She didn't have to. She just told the truth. That Laura had planned this. That she tried to make me look like the bad guy. That I hadn't raised my voice once. Not even when I found out. Laura's defense crumbled fast. I wasn't watching it unfold directly. I didn't follow the social media back and forth. I didn't lurk on her profiles. But I noticed the silence. The lack of new photos. The sudden disappearance of comments on her latest posts. The drop in mutual follows. And the final sign? Dave deleted his Instagram entirely. I guess it's easier to disappear than to live in the mess you helped create. One night, about 3 weeks after she was served, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. It was Laura's mother. We hadn't spoken since Christmas. "Jason," she said gently, "I don't know all the details and I don't expect you to tell me, but I wanted you to hear something." "Okay. I'm sorry for what my daughter did. Truly. You always treated her with love, and I wish she had done the same." I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened. "She's going through something," she added. "But that's no excuse. You didn't deserve this. None of it." "Thank you," I said, voice low. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate." I mean that. After we hung up, I just sat in the dark for a while. Funny how the apology I expected least was the one that hit the hardest. A few days later, I passed Laura downtown. Total accident. I was leaving work. She was crossing the street from a lunch spot. We locked eyes for maybe half a second. She looked thinner, worn, not like someone chasing a fresh start, more like someone chasing an excuse. She didn't wave. Neither did I. She turned and kept walking. And that was it. No dramatic confrontation. No final monologue. Just two people passing through each other's lives for the last time. One walking away lighter, the other carrying the weight of every lie. I moved into a bright apartment near work. No memories, no tension. Just space to breathe. Bought my own furniture, chose my own pace. At work, I earned a promotion. 2 months later, I ran into Melissa, an old college friend. We grabbed coffee. No pressure, no baggage. Just a real conversation. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't surviving, I was living. Sure. Here are parts 6 and 7. Each written in 500 characters as requested. ###6. Freedom and first steps ****. I moved into a bright apartment near work. No memories, no tension. Just space to breathe. Bought my own furniture, chose my own pace. At work, I earned a promotion. 2 months later, I ran into Melissa, an old college friend. We grabbed coffee. No pressure, no baggage. Just a real conversation. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't surviving, I was living. One day, I ****, hope she was worth it. I deleted it without blinking. A week later, Laura emailed an apology. Sorry it ended this way. I forwarded it to my lawyer. By then, I was planning a trip to Montana. No more pain. No more pretending. I wasn't fighting for the past anymore. I was building something new. Finally, for me.